this session is an idea that was sparked from an initiative that we've undertook, which was to go out to the respective communities in which we operate and ask our membership a very simple question: is what role could we play to make our communities a better place to live, work, and play? In the Codroy Valley region, one thing that came out loud and clear was around housing. And as you appreciate, the Codroy Valley is a beautiful place to live. However, there is an aging demographic, although I believe is one of the fastest growing rural communities in the province. The demographic in the Codroy Valley area also showcases that a lot of senior members of the population are potentially could be choose to live in other parts of the province as they get older. And a lot of that stems from housing, not wanting to keep up their existing housing and seek out communities that offer different housing opportunities. So when that particular item was identified and during our member engagement session, is what they were called, it prompted us to kind of seek ideas in which we could potentially resolve that community issue. As hopefully many of you are aware on the webinar this evening, this was a similar exercise that we did in the Port aux Basques area when we assisted a group of concerned citizens who was very concerned about the lack of child care services in the Port aux Basques area. And we assisted them in forming a cooperative to provide child care services, and that it's in its second year of operation now, and it's working extremely well. So it was only natural for us when we were privy to the situation in the Codroy Valley, the housing requirements, that we said, this co-op model works really well in the daycare situation. It could work well in the housing situation as well. So Candace has mobilized a presentation here so that we could learn a little bit more of what that could look like and what does that mean, so that interested parties within that area could potentially seek out this cooperative alternative and to find a solution on addressing the need that I spoke of. Now, I just want to spend a second or two on the co-op model itself, and I know Ross is going to speak about the cooperative housing and how it looks and feels. The co-op model is a very, very simple model. It's one in which it's about mobilizing a group of people with a common need. And if you take our credit union, for example, that was founded in the 30s when a group of people came together because they had lack of access to banking services. And, they came together, they formed their own credit union. At that time, there were 3 in the valley. And there were other co-ops, but the actual financial institutions were 3. And then eventually we merged together to become 1. So it was really built on the principle of a lack of financial services. And they came together, and here we are today with 5 branches serving Western Newfoundland with over $160 million in assets. And what's really unique about it is that the members actually own it. So the stakeholders themselves are the members, and they elect the board, and then the board hires management, and the management become a part of the staff, and the staff serve the members. So as outlined in the graphic on the right, it's a full circle, which is a really unique model. In essence, it is the members who form it, and it's for the benefit of the members. So as you can appreciate, and hopefully that resonates with you, as Ross does her presentation and introduces us to what the cooperative housing is and what it's like. So Candace, if you could just flip your slide, So we're excited that I've been calling her Ross, but I noticed that's what she communicated with. So Rosalind Langer has decided to join us tonight. We're very delighted that she took time out to bring this to our attention. She is the executive director for the what does CHANAL stand for? I know it's Cooperative Housing Association for Newfoundland and Labrador.
Yes, got it.
Okay, perfect. For over 20 years, she provides service to local co-op and as property and project manager. She is the voice for cooperative housing in Newfoundland and Labrador, and she serves on the Co-op Housing Foundation of Canada and executive director of the Roundtable Committee. She's held various positions within the co-op housing, affordable housing, and rural remote housing sectors, provincially and nationally. So as you can tell, we're delighted to have her here as an expert to speak to us about co-op housing. I think just as a point of housekeeping, we'll allow Rosalind to go through a few of her slides, and then at the end, maybe Rosalind, you can ask anybody who would have any questions that they would reserve until the end. So thank you very much, Rosalind, for joining us, and I'll turn the slideshow over to you.
It's great to be here and be able to give this presentation this evening. I don't know if anybody is aware or not, but there are currently 21 housing co-ops in the province. There's actually one in Corner Brook. There are two in Central, one in Gander, and there's 11 in Mount Pearl and 6 in St. John's. So we do have a few housing units, which is 396 units in the province currently, providing homes to that many families. We've been around now since, in the province, I moved into my co-op in 1983. I still live in a housing co-op, as well as my 3 children live in housing co-ops and their children live in housing co-ops. So for me, housing co-op is the best thing since sliced bread. I have gone the whole gamut of owning a home, renting a home, and when I found co-op housing and became a co-op housing member, that for me was what spelled housing, because just for one thing, it's the sense of community that you have living in a housing co-op. So what I'll do is, like Corey said, I'll go through the first few of my slides. Don't hesitate to ask questions or print them out or type them out like Candace was saying. And then we can have some questions and answers, or I can go through the whole slide presentation. I think there's 6 or 7 slides. And then if we can ask questions and I can provide more information after that. So it's up to you who are sitting in and listening to this evening. And welcome everybody. I can't see any faces other than mine and Candace and Corey's, but it's nice to have so many people on the other end of the province that are interested in co-op housing. So first of all, what is a housing co-op? A housing co-op is a duly incorporated cooperative business, and that's one thing I like to get across to everybody that I give this presentation to. And even there are times when we do this for our current co-op members as a refresher, that you are a business owner. First and foremost, you are a business owner and you have responsibility for your business. We provide housing and other services to our members. Co-ops are shareholders in the co-op. We'll touch on that in another couple of slides. In the housing co-ops, the members control and manage their housing cooperative together. So there's not one voice answering for everybody. You're not bound by a landlord or one particular person. We all have a voice and a vested interest in our housing. Members pay a monthly housing fee. We call it a housing charge. And that's equal to the cost of operating the co-op without a profit. Because all housing co-ops, like all co-ops, I do believe, are a non-profit. Members have security of tenure because they're both landlord and tenant. And if you're wondering what security of tenure means, Webster's defines it as the act or right to hold property, the length of time or condition under which something is held, and the stakes of holding one's position on a permanent basis. And certainly with co-op housing, unless you default on, say, your housing charge payments or other policies and procedures or bylaws that the co-op has in place, then you are there permanently. I mean, I've lived in my co-op now. I've been, like I said, I think it's 37 years I've been a co-op member. The co-op is an ongoing business. When one member leaves, a new member comes in and fills that vacancy. We follow the co-op principles, and Corey had the principles up on one of his slides at the beginning. and we incorporate them into all of our co-op life whenever we can. I'm just going to do a little run through of what the principles are. The first one is voluntary and open membership. The second one is, and this is a very important one, is democratic member control. The third one is member economic participation. So in some cases, we may have members who are subsidized. So we do have some full market members. We don't discriminate for that kind of thing. The fourth one is autonomy and independence. The fifth one is education, training, and information. And again, education is one of the most important things that you will find that comes along with co-op housing. The sixth principle is cooperation among cooperatives. And the last one is concern for community. So whilst we are sometimes communities within a community, we still are part of the larger community. So it's great to be able to get out there, get your voice heard, and make sure that everybody is aware of co-op housing. The next slide is, who is co-op housing for? It's for people who are accustomed to renting but would like to have a home of their own instead. Seniors owning a large house who want to sell and move to suitable rental accommodations with controlled monthly charges. Young couples saving to buy a home and in the meantime want to live in housing that they have some control over. And it's been my experience that usually when people move in and they say, well, we want to save to buy a house, they usually stay. And we've had instances where we've had people go out and buy a home to turn around and sell it and come back into co-op housing. So there's lots of good stuff about co-op housing. Low-income families who have little bargaining power or choice under normal market conditions. Most of the time, people just don't have the money for down payment. They don't want to borrow the down payment as well as their mortgage, because that makes the payments that much higher. They want to have control over what exactly they can pay, and co-op housing gives them that opportunity. Anyone who prefers co-op housing to private rentals, and like I said, I've been in rentals before, and no, co-op housing is for me. Membership is open and voluntary, regardless of their social, political, religious, or marital status. So one of the big things with co-op housing is we don't discriminate for any reason. It would have to be something that would be out of this world kind of thing before somebody would discriminate, or you wouldn't be allowed access to housing co-op. So there's absolutely no, or there should be no discrimination. And how does it work? Well, members ensure that the co-op is running smoothly and that the co-op remains viable for the next generation of members. And the big thing with me is, like I said, I've got a vested interest in co-op housing. So I want to see this, go on in perpetuity. And we can pass it on to the next generation, and then the next generation, and the next generation. And I think Corey had a slide there which says each year they elect from among themselves a board of directors, and the board of directors oversees the operations of the co-op through governance. The next point is the board is responsible for the governance of the co-op and the hiring of property and financial management services. Property and financial services take care of the day-to-day operations of the co-op. And well, that's what I do. So I'm answerable to the board that I work for, who are in turn answerable to the members, because without the members, you can't have a housing co-op or any kind of co-op. Anybody have any questions, or you want to just go through the next 3 slides?
I'm monitoring the chat and I don't see anything coming in yet, but I'll definitely let you know.
Okay. So what does it cost to be a member? Well, there's no down payment, but you do have to buy shares into the housing co-op. Currently, my housing co-op shares are at $1,000. Most of the co-ops right now are at $1,000, but they're looking at increasing them. And that'll come up down in the next slide, I think. The price of the shares is considerably less than a down payment. So when somebody comes into my housing co-op, my current market rent is $695. So they pay half of that up front, and then they pay $10 a month until with a regular monthly housing charge until the maximum number of shares is purchased. So it's 100 shares at $10 a share. When a member leaves the co-op, he or she sells back the same shares to the co-op, who in turn then sells them to the next member that comes in. And the members determine what the monthly housing charges will be each year through an annual budget. Next slide. And your responsibilities, like every worthwhile activity, your co-op requires your commitment and co-op and cooperation. That includes prompt payment of your monthly housing charges. And the reason for that is you have to remember that when you are a co-op and living in a co-op, the co-op has a mortgage, and that mortgage has to be paid on the first of the month, and that's paid through the members making their payments on the first of the month. There are other liabilities that have to be paid through the month as well. You have your insurances and your taxes and that kind of thing, your maintenance and your replacement reserve. You're required to attend general memberships and special membership meetings as they come up. Volunteering is participation. That's every member willing to do his or her share. So you have to serve on the board. You can serve on a committee if committees exist. Not all co-ops right now actually have a lot of working committees. And then you help each other out when the need arises. And that could be anything from bringing your neighbor a loaf of bread to helping shovel the driveway, you know, or taking them to an appointment somewhere if they don't have transportation. Living peaceably and cooperatively with all the other members, and maintaining the interior and exterior of your co-op in accordance with the co-op's maintenance policy, which forms part of the co-op's policies and procedures. And there's also bylaws that you have, that all the co-ops have as well. Isn't a co-op housing the same as renting? No. There are many important advantages to nonprofit cooperative housing over renting. Through democratic control, the members are ensured an equal voice in all decisions affecting their housing. Democratic control also ensures that monies are spent according to the budget and not to the detriment of the co-op. So each year, annually, the board gets together with financial management. They come up with the budget. They include what's going to cost for all of their expenditures, and that includes if and when they need a housing charge increase, money that they put aside in the replacement reserve, their day-to-day maintenance, their taxes and their insurance, and anything else that they have. Unlike rent, co-op housing charges rise only with increases in operating costs and not for profit. Housing charges can be significantly lower than private market accommodations. Like I said earlier, my co-op's housing charge right now are at $6.95. We are in an area where the same type of units are at $1,300 and $1,400 a month. So we're significantly lower than the current market rents. Cooperative housing provides a unique opportunity for people to build a community and to share and assist each other in ways beyond their housing needs. Just like I mentioned before, helping your neighbors, just doing small things, attending meetings, paying your housing charges on time. Cooperatives are not bound by landlord and tenants. Matter of fact, if our members go to landlord and tenant, they just send them back here to us because we're bound by government legislation, which is through the Cooperatives Act. And with the Cooperatives Act, my mouth's gone dry now, excuse me. With the Cooperatives Act, you have to build a set of bylaws based specifically on the Cooperatives Act. So one can't override the other, but they both work hand in hand. And when you put your policies and procedures in place, they should also incorporate sections of the Cooperatives Act and from your bylaws, but the Act will override your bylaws and your policies and procedures at any one given time, because that is government legislation. Co-ops are non-discriminating, and last but not least, co-ops offer a great opportunity to its members to learn and grow through education. Excuse me, which can be used not only in your personal life, but in your professional life as well. I know I'll probably race through those because I have a tendency to talk rather quickly, but I mean, when I started in co-op housing, I was very shy, very timid. I don't even think I spoke up for the first 3 years of my co-op life. And then all of a sudden I decided, okay, if I'm going to live here, I have to become part of the community. So I started taking courses with CHF Canada. That's the national branch of cooperative housing. And then I just went from there and I took other accounting courses. I did my property management through the Institute of Housing Management in Ontario. Most of it was face-to-face in classroom, but a lot of it was online. And you can use it in your personal life, you can use it in your professional life. So education for me, again, is one of the most important things when you become a member of a housing co-op. So that's it.
So thank you so much.
I'm gonna go get a bottle of water before I start talking again. Sorry about that, excuse me.
No, that's okay. We actually did have a couple of questions that came in through the chat feature. So I'll wait for Roz to come back there now. Let her get it. So Patty, I did get your chat there. So when Roz gets back now, I'll ask your questions for you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Or actually, Patty, if you want, you can certainly ask them too.
Okay. Is she back?
Yeah, I
Yes,
think
I am.
Roz, you're back. Yeah.
I am.
Who is responsible for like repairs inside the unit if something breaks, or is that the tenant or the cooperative? How does that
would
work?
be the cooperative, depending on how the damage was caused. If it was willful damage caused by the member, then they would be responsible to pay the cost of having the repairs done.
Right.
And what we do is we go out and hire a contractor, they go in and do the repairs, and then that's costed back to the member.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are co-ops generally pet friendly?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Just looking here now. Do you have another question from Rosalind Roy? Rosalind, are you unmuted? Would you like to ask it, or would you like me to ask it on your behalf?
You can go ahead and ask.
Okay. So Rosalind was wondering if there's a limit on the number of units you'd build in the co-op housing in the Codroy Valley.
That would be come under your jurisdiction of what is it a town? Like how is Codroy Valley, is it a town or a municipality, or how is it working? Is it part of a bigger community?
It's I believe it's set up as a local service district. Corey, I'll let you take that because it looks like you were about to weigh in.
Yeah, it's a local service district, Rosalind. So basically there would be limited restrictions on what could be built,
Yes.
or how this could potentially look.
Yeah. So they would have probably limits on height and that kind of thing. But again, you'd have to go by whatever was in your area, that was dictated to by your governing body that's in place. Yeah.
Rosalind, that's an interesting question that was asked, and it's one that I was thinking about while you were speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, like, based on your experience, what have you found that works more efficiently for co-op housing? Is it like individual unit, or like some type of like a condo type co-op housing? Like, based on your experience, what have you found that has been worked the best?
What works the best is actually what the group is interested in building. All across the country, we have single homes. Like, I live in a bungalow, but the majority of my housing co-op is made up of duplexes. We do have one apartment building here in the province, but just one. It's a 3-story walk-up. So again, it depends on what the members of the co-op are going to want to see built. And it also is going to depend on how much space they have, if they can go higher than a 3-story, or if they just want to do a 2-story. They can do duplexes, they can do, basically whatever is allowable in the area. But it would come down to the group. Once they get into the planning stage and the design stage, it would come down to them as to what they actually want. And one recommendation, if you do go building co-op housing, and I'm hoping you do, because we don't have enough co-op housing in the province, so we could use another 300,000 units, let alone anything else, is remember 2 bedrooms, regardless of, even if it's a single person, especially when it's seniors, keep them in mind for a 2-bedroom, because you have to remember they have family, they've had children, they have grandchildren, they have people who want to come for a visit. If you have 1 bedroom, you can't really have people in. And my reason for saying this is my mom lived in an apartment building for 30 odd years with 1 bedroom. And she was always told she didn't qualify because she would have been overhoused with the 2 bedroom. So I made that one of my missions, that when I did meet with government, I did meet with other housing officials, that I, got that point across, that you can't limit a senior to a 1 bedroom unit. What if they get sick and they have to bring in care, they have to have 24-hour care? Well, those people need a place to put their head down. So, when you start your planning, don't go less than a 2 bedroom units.
That's a really wonderful point. And thank you very much for giving us that insight. We do have a few more questions that are coming in on the chat. So Sean Lehman was wondering where the initial investment comes from.
That again, you would have to get together with your group that you're going to start your co-op with, and you'd have to go out. You might do some fundraising, approach your politicians, approach Newfoundland Labrador Housing. I know with the new National Housing Initiative that's on the go, there is some funding that you can avail of. CMHC currently has a program where you can access it, and I don't have it handy, and I'll never remember the name. It's an initiative. I'll send you the information on that tomorrow, Candace, and you can send it out to the members, where you can actually go and look for seed money, and you can hire a professional to do up all your plans, to sit down with the group, to do your research, to do your funding, find out where your funding is to, and how you want to go about getting it. You can get some of your community businesses involved in it. So there's lots of ideas, and there's lots of ways to raise your money other than getting just your mortgage, because first of all, are you going to look for having your property that you're going to own? Are you going to look to have that donated? Are you going to look to the government if they have the surplus land that the federal government has lots of time? Sometimes they put it out. They had a lot last year in Rocky Harbour. I don't know whatever happened to that one. And then, you can go to your town. Sometimes they will give you a startup donation. There's lots of different things you can do for your funding. Depends on the energy of the group.
That's
how much you want to have your co-op housing.
That's certainly a statement that's supported heavily by our experiences with the daycare co-op. It does require a lot of energy.
It does.
And it's exciting. It's very rewarding. I can speak to that from the daycare co-op. Once you see that happen and that success take place, it's extremely rewarding. So we do have another question. Who decides who gets a unit in the co-op, and how do you become eligible?
Who decides? What we did in my co-op, because I was on the ground running with mine, and Mount Pearl did give us, we had 42 units. So Mount Pearl did give us a piece of land where we could build 36 units. So that was 18 duplexes. And then in order to keep CMHC, because all the funding came through them, they were our lenders, while we were waiting for Mount Pearl to, dot their I's and cross their T's on this piece of property, we bought 5 existing units within Mount Pearl itself, just so that we could keep our status going as a co-op. And what we did was we put the numbers of the lots at that time on Easton Place into a bag, and everybody drew a lot number, so that ended up being your house that you would occupy once they were built. That was the fair way to do it. Other than that, you got some people, well, I want an AND unit, I don't want an AND, I want it in the middle. So, that way it covered a lot of bases, and it saved a lot of arguments down the road. Well, you got a better piece than I did, or my piece of land is not as big as yours. So to do it fair, that's what we did. And, that's what I recommend, especially if it's a new build. Definitely. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks for that. And I'm sure there are a lot of best practices as well across the country, like you said, in housing co-ops for the way that they've structured that stuff. So we had another question come in. Carol, your question was, I assume it would be living on one floor. So yeah, I'm sure that Roz can speak to that in her experience. Well,
from my experience, like I said, in the province we have very few that are actually all on one floor. That's only the 24 unit apartment building. All of the other units are either duplexes or row houses or townhouses. So you would have some stairs. But if you were going to do a multi-generational, which is another thing that I recommend, don't just put seniors in a seniors co-op, because whilst they're with seniors, they're cut off then from children and young adults and older adults and everybody. It's a win-win situation when you have a multi-generational project going. So if you're going to build a building, 2 or 3 stories, make sure that you have an elevator. If it's 3, even if it's 2, you might want a small kind of a lift. But put your seniors on the ground floor, which would be one. You know, you could have your 2 bedrooms all on one level. And if you're going to build duplexes, what we're currently looking at in here now, we have 2 co-ops with huge pieces of land. So they're going to take down 2 duplexes, which is 4 units, and then they're going to put on one co-op is going to build 12, what we're going to call granny units, which would be 2 bedroom, all on one level. You know, just like little bungalows, but duplex bungalows. So that's what we're hoping to build in here. We've got to go ahead from Mount Pearl, and St. John's is kind of, we're looking at what we can do. So, you know, just if you're going to build that kind of type, then to make sure they are just one level, especially for your seniors. I mean, the younger people don't care if there's 20 stories, but your seniors just want 1 level and 2 bedrooms.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for that. We had another question that came in. So I think maybe just kind of going back to that ownership structure. Patty was saying, so the people that organize the co-op and build it are the people who own the units. So I think that there's an important distinction there, but I'd certainly let you tackle that.
You own the units as a group because you have to remember it's the co-op that owns the units, and you are the members that live in the co-op. So you don't actually own your own home. You can stay there as long as you want. You can pass it on to your children. If something happens and you have to move out, then you can't say, well, my kids are going to move in. They can move in if they qualify for a membership, which would be the same as anybody else. You know, like say when I moved into my co-op, if I was to move out tomorrow, I can't dictate who's going to live in my unit or pass it on to somebody else. I have to give back my shares because you are a business and you're running a business. So I give back my shares. They give me back my $1,000. And your shares are paid back at par. You don't ever collect any interest on them because again, it's non-profit and you're not in it to make a profit. You're in it to, you know, for your co-op to survive. So you don't actually own the home, but you do own the home. You own the home as long as you live there, but you don't own it so that you could pass it on to somebody else or sell it at the end of the day. That would be a different kind of a co-op. That would be an equity co-op, and we don't have any equity co-ops here in the province.
Well, I'm glad that you said that though, because that was something that Corey and I had discussed was, you know, the idea of maintaining some form of equity structure within the co-op system. So maybe that would be something that we would have to explore a little further, and that the idea of investing and then giving to, you know, family or your children or whatnot. But I will kind of move in because we have a few more questions that are coming in. So this is lovely to see this kind of engagement. So there was a question about legislative or regulatory requirements for a reserve account, similar to a condo association for unseen expenses of, or common expenses such as elevators not working.
Yeah, that is a requirement, and that would be a requirement of your mortgage as well. That usually gets written into your mortgage so that you have to put aside a certain amount of money every year so that you accumulate a replacement reserve, because replacement and reserve is exactly what it says, replacement of your, and it's a reserve for replacement items. That's roofs, doors, windows, siding, bathrooms, kitchens, flooring, driveways, and that's about what you would cover under replacement. Then your day-to-day would be hot water boilers, appliances, that kind of, but that still comes under replacement reserve, but the care of those things comes from your general maintenance budget. So there are some things that come from the maintenance budget. It could be your door handle is broken, or you lost your keys and you need a new set of locks. That kind of stuff is covered under routine maintenance, but the other stuff is your capital repairs, and that's covered under your replacement reserve. So it is a requirement, or it should be a requirement of your capital of your budget, of your mortgage. We're currently right now in the process of working with a credit union here in St. John's actually, and we've already taken 2 co-ops through. They've got their first mortgages paid off. Now they've borrowed second mortgages to redo, you know, all the capital items that they need done. And one of the co-ops is the one that I first lived in, which is Easton, the first one I talked about. And they just borrowed $2.5 million. They have their mortgages paid off. They've had them paid off for last 3 or 4 years. But because they're so big, they can generate their revenues really, really quickly. So at any one given time, Easton will have $500,000 in the bank, which they can avail of, you know. But because they want to do all of their roofs, they're doing all of their doors and their windows, their siding, they're doing all of their bathrooms, their flooring, and their kitchens under this $2.5 million. And that, again, is thank you to the credit union. But they have management, and they have replacement reserve. That kind of stuff is all written into that new mortgage. So you cannot have a replacing reserve.
Okay, wonderful. I think that that addresses that question. We had another question that came in. In your experience, have the housing costs or payments fluctuated much?
No, not a lot. Depends on the market, and it depends on what the current market rents are in your area. But we've never had them go back. Like if when I first started living in a co-op housing, I was paying $435 a month, and 38 years later, 38 years later, I'm now paying $695. So that's not a big increase in 35 years. Yet the co-op is healthy. We have a replacing reserve. We get our maintenance done as it's required. We also have financial management. We don't need property management because I kind of take care of that myself. But we do have our financial management that's paid for. But it's not, and the reason why I do property management is because that's what my job is, and it would be kind of senseless to go and pay for it when we have somebody living in that co-op who can do it. But I'm not always going to be able to do it because I'm soon going to retire. I'll be 65, my birthday. And I don't plan on working until I'm 95, although my husband thinks I should. So, you know, you're going to want outside management services, and that should be written into your mortgage agreement as well. Because in the long run, it makes co-op living easier. It takes the onus off of members having to deal with their members and their neighbors. And it's somebody completely independent who can look at it from a different perspective and offer a different solution. And it saves the members from having to, sometimes it can turn into arguments and that kind of thing, and can make co-op living not very nice. That's happened in the past as well. But all of the co-ops in the last 10, 15 years have all bought onto no in-house property or financial management. It's all costed out and put in their budget. Yeah.
So Rosalind,
Yeah.
So Rosalind, this co-op housing that you're describing is very similar to the cooperative daycare that was open up in Port Bass. And I know some of the questions that Patty been asking were really on point, because in a nutshell, the daycare is owned by the member. That center is owned by members. You pay $100 and you become a member. You can choose to avail of the service by placing your child in the daycare, or like myself and Candace, become a member but not basically utilize the service. The co-op owns the building, and all the liabilities and assets that go with it. And then you know, if you choose to leave that co-op, you get your share back. So
it's like being a member of a credit union.
Pardon?
It's the same as being a member of your credit union.
Yeah, exactly the same thing.
Change your banking institution, you get your shares back.
Right. And I noticed that Rosalind asked the question back there, what's the next step if enough people are interested and want to pursue this? And she got a question mark. And I would say, in response to that question, and I guess I probably should have opened up with this when I first started talking. The first slide is the credit union. When we played a role at the daycare, we felt that we had the co-op. We brought to the table our experience in managing co-op, and so our I guess our bit of activity that we participated in was we provided an office space, meeting space. We were a connection for, working with the Newfoundland Federation of Co-ops and mobilizing them to come out and do training for our board. So we played that role, but it's important to distinguish that there were members of the Port of Ask community that actually formed the co-op, and they were the board, and then they eventually became the board of directors, and then of course open up the membership to get more people involved. But I would think the same holding true if for the Codroy Valley area, that we would play a very similar role. We would have no problem facilitating and ensuring and working with the individuals who would be interested in seeing a cooperative housing in the Valley area. I think it would be tremendous. I think there's so much value that could be gained by pursuing this in the Codroy Valley area, and we would certainly be at the table providing that support. And to your point about, I think Sean was the one that talked about capital. The daycare was no different. That $1 million property that went up Port of Bass, we had to lobby government, lobby the federal government, and obviously, our share, $100 share requirement was not enough capital to put that infrastructure in place.
No, that's right, exactly.
And we had to borrow from the credit union. So, that same capital opportunity, especially today, as I've seen the announcement made just this morning on big federal $5 billion project, I think, for homelessness. There is funds available to assist with moving this particular project along.
Yes.
So to answer Rosalind's question, I think if we could mobilize enough people in the Valley area that has a vested interest in seeing something like this go forward, not necessarily even that they got to have that they're seeking housing, but just the initiative to kind of see something like this go forward, we would certainly assist in any capacity we could.
Yeah, and that's the same way with channeling here, anything we could do to help, or, with politicians, or just rallying the troops, as they say, and see what can be done. I mean, we need a lot more co-op housing than we have, and we need it on all points in the provinces, not just the big areas like Mount Pearl, St. John's, Corner Brook. We need more housing. Everybody has a housing need, and housing is not a privilege anymore. Housing is a right. We all have a right to housing, but we have to be able to maintain it as decent, affordable housing with no barriers. And if you're going looking for funding, some of that funding, I think, that was announced today, if you're willing to put in, say, even a couple of units, you were going to designate to homelessness, or people like women who are getting out of abusive situations. If you're going to allow housing for that, you probably, and more than likely, would avail of some of this funding that's on the go. Because they're looking for all aspects of housing. It's not just homelessness right now. Yeah. So there's lots of things to be done. There's lots of legwork that needs to be done first, but it's not something that can't be done. You just need a group of determined people who are going to be dedicated to see it through to the end, and work their butts off to just get done what needs to be done. And the reward at the end of the day is fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Yeah, so it's highly recommended.
That's wonderful. We just had one more chat that came in there from Carol. And so I think it's just a clarifying question. So the requirement is to buy 10 shares and then pay the monthly fee. And I think, again, as you said, every co-op may be a little bit different. So it depends, the share structuring and the pricing and all of that stuff might be different in different co-ops, depending on the needs and the will, I think, of the members
That's right.
So, but that's essentially, I think, what would be expected.
Yeah, my recommendation when it comes to your shares is, once you figure out what your mortgage payment is going to be, and then you break it down into what your housing charges are going to be, you have at least a month or 2 months would make up what your shares would be. So, if you were going to pay a $500 a month housing fee, then make your shares $1,000, because if somebody goes out, and this has happened in the past, and they might go out and decide, well, the last month I'm not paying my housing charges because I need to go somewhere else, or I need my money for something else. So you could be on the hook for a month or 2 months housing charges, or you could be on the hook for a month's housing charges and a unit that the carpets have been destroyed and you've got to put flooring back. but it's not from normal wear and tear, it's destruction. So if you got enough money in your shares, that can go back into your maintenance to ready that unit for the next member that's coming in. That's just some things to look at. Like I said, it's not something that you can't do, and you can put your shares as high as you want. I know in BC in particular, some of their shares are up $7,000-8,000. They actually borrow the money through a lending program through their co-op, and they pay it back at a certain rate every month with their housing charges till they get to 5 or 6 or 8, or I think some of them might even now be at $10,000. And that's not an equity co-op, that's just a regular housing co-op.
Yeah, and it's important to note that the shares is like, your one-time thing, as you indicated, that, that's not an ongoing commitment, that once you pay your full allocation shares.
Yeah, then it's paid. Yeah, once you reach a ceiling, like my co-op is $1,000, so once we get that $1,000 paid, then you don't pay that extra 10 or 20 or $25 a month with your housing charge that comes off then. Yeah.
So hopefully that answers Carol's question. And I know in my experience, when I visited a worker co-op in Europe, the share requirement there was 37,000 euros. These were workers that owned actually the auto parts manufacturing business.
Yeah.
And what the credit union did there, similar to what you're describing, is if the person got hired by this factory and they wanted to become an owner in the factory, and at that time the share price was 37,000, the credit union would loan the worker the share price, the share value, and at a very low rate, and then they would just they would pay their shares into that factory, and then slowly pay back the credit union over time. And that worked out really well, and that's something also that could be replicated here, because it's very important that the housing be affordable. And if the share subscription was unattainable, then there's certainly ways around that.
Yeah, and you can't make housing unattainable because it's needed, and there's so many people that are looking for decent affordable housing, and they go out of their way sometimes just to get enough to pay their shares. And that again has to be a reasonable amount as well, so that you're not putting it out of people's reach.
I think another important point to raise, Rosalind, is similar to the daycare, is that there was a lack of entrepreneurs. I know that there was talks or attempts by the municipality, the town, to kind of provide that child care service, and there was a attempt for a nonprofit to try. They just couldn't get any traction.
Yeah.
And there was nobody stepping up because, of course, child care services is not a profitable venture. So similar to this situation in the Valley, where if there's a defined need in housing, nobody's stepping up to the plate. And the government obviously like these types of arrangements. This is definitely a good alternative. Well, I think it's the best alternative, like you said, to address the housing requirements. And all it just takes is a group of people that got the tenacity to kind of work, navigate through this, and then for the business community, especially in the area, and for the well-being and what makes up a community, having this type of housing in the area, I think would be fabulous.
Exactly. What's the population in the Codroy Valley?
Anyone want to take a stab at
Does
that?
anybody know? Like, just give me a rough idea.
1,800.
Oh, well, that's not too bad. You would have enough to.
That's including South Branch and McDougall's.
Yeah, I'd say you'd have enough there if you want to do 30 or 40 unit, if you could get a piece of property. And currently Newfoundland, I don't know if you know the Newfoundland Labrador Housing CEO, Julie Mullally. She is housing oriented, and she thinks co-op housing and nonprofit housing is the best thing she's come across. So she is an advocate for co-op housing. So if and when you get to housing, just ask to speak to Julie, because she's just phenomenal. And she's just a down-to-earth girl like ourselves. Yeah.
That's wonderful. I had one more question that came in from Harry Coates, and Harry said, will you get to get organization to build individual units, not members? I think I need some clarification on that. Harry, are you able to unmute?
Yes, thank you, Candace. I was wondering if Roz would like to talk about the possibility of individual people who plan to build their own homes could form a cooperative for that purpose.
Sure, there's no reason why you can't form a cooperative for any, as long as it's to do with housing, any number of people can get together and you can build whatever you design, you can do it. My sister tells me all the time, if you can think it, you can do it. So if you've got a certain project or a number of units or, and you got a nice piece of property, there's no reason why 10 or 15 people can't get together and build a housing co-op. It's doable, yes. And encouraged as well. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Roz.
No problem. My pleasure.
I forgot to hit the slide for discussion and questions, but we've gone ahead and done that anyway. So I'm just going to take a moment and see if there are any more questions come in, but we're very close to the top of the hour now at 8 o'clock. So
hour went fast.
I know that hour went really fast, and lots of great engagement and discussion, which I think bodes really well for this process in this particular area. So I wanted to take a moment to certainly thank you, Roz, for taking the time to spend
My
with
pleasure.
us.
And if anybody's got any questions, just pass them along to Candace and I'll answer them for you and go back through her again. And anything that you need done, just shout at me and I'll come running.
Wonderful. I was trying to put a message in the chat for everyone there now with my contact information and see if those, and I keep, Corey, I don't know what's going on, but it seemed to be sending the message to just Corey personally.
Oh.
So what I'll do is I'll speak it out loud, and I'm certainly pretty easy to find anyway. But my email address is cmatthews, MATTHEWS @lecu.ca. And my direct line is 695-7061. So certainly, oops, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Anytime that, if anyone has any questions or would love to have a copy of the presentation, we'd certainly love to send that out to people. I think Tracy, for the most part, has a list of most of the people's email addresses that attended today. Mm-hmm. So we'll definitely do that. And I definitely would encourage that anyone that's interested in moving this kind of needle forward to contact me, and we can certainly get moving on that, because the next step would be, the next logical step we would start feasibility surveys or discussions in terms of is there enough interest, and what does that interest look like. And so there's a lot of public consultation that would be involved in next steps, but it's definitely something that we're on board with supporting, just from our cooperative principle standpoint with the credit union. So it would be an exciting project to take on and see through to fruition.
Yeah, we've got enough people on engaged here this evening to start a housing co-op. We have a couple in here that are 7 and 8 units. That's how many units are in the actual co-op.
I was going to ask you that, Rosalind. I was going to ask you what the smallest number of housing.
Smallest number is 7. Yeah, and the largest is 42.
And in your experience, have you seen, a few units start out just to get a kick at it, get started and establish, and then all of a sudden you see them grow and prosper?
Yes. Yeah. They want more. They want more units. So, or they'll get somebody who'll come along and say, "How can I join?" So that's another house added on, or a duplex added on, or it can go fairly quickly.
And you mentioned that Newfoundland and Labrador housing, they see this as the best alternative.
Yes.
What's your experience? What would you give? I guess the provincial government. What's their appetite like for something like this?
You have to get to the politicians and sidestep the bureaucrats, because the bureaucrats kind of send you around in circles chasing your own tail. So if you can get your politicians on side, then you've got your foot in the door really, really solid. Yeah. Now, federal government and the provincial government are all there for housing. I mean, that's one of their mandates at the moment. So Go get at it while you can, and like I said, sidestep the bureaucrats and get right to the politicians. Yeah, that's my experience anyway.
Oh, that's certainly sound advice, and just kind of to end things off with the fact that we're, doing this or considering doing this in the Codroy Valley, which already has such a well-developed history of cooperativism. So it certainly bodes well for something like this for sure. So
yeah, and I really do hope that you get it off the ground, because just the start of another co-op, I think, would get the government again looking at and say, okay, well, they're looking at co-op housing again, so let's start putting more funding into it. It's all going to be a help. So the quicker you can get it going, and the better it's going to be for other areas in the province that are also looking for co-op housing.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that that pretty much wraps it up for us. Corey, did you have any last words?
I just want to thank everybody, 21 participants, for chiming in this evening. I really appreciate it. And thank you, Rosalind, for taking time out. It's
My pleasure.
nice to hear some more cooperative mindset and enthusiasm about swap models. I like being in that environment.
That's good.
And you share mine and Candace's enthusiasm for sure. So just encourage again, as Candace indicated, if anybody feels moved by your words and sees that they would like to participate or be a part of some history, and we showcase that daycare is a possibility and it's functioning well, and we certainly wouldn't mind getting our hands dirty to see something foster in the Codroy Valley there. So just reach out to Candace, and we'll go from there and see what takes place.
Yeah, and let me know what else I can do. If there's anything, I'm only too glad to help.
Well, I'm sure if there's any fraction, I'm sure that you may regret that statement, but I know you won't.
No, I'll never regret it when it comes to housing, never.
We got a small window before your retirement, so we're going to try to capitalize on that.
Well, like I said, if my husband has his way, I won't retire till I'm 100. Yes, be
Very
plans
good
for
one.
when I do retire, but I can't retire.
Well, thank
Anyway,
you again.
it's nice seeing you, and take care, everybody. Stay safe.
Take care.
Wonderful.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye, everyone.